Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Saturday Beach Chat with Don. I would like to say real quick that if any of you have received invoices from me and they're not correct, just email me back and we will fix that. You have paid, but some of you have not, and I'm wondering if that's because I still owe you chats. Don't be afraid to email me back. I'm not here to gouge you. I just want to get what people owe and get things taken care of. So beyond that, I'm going to let Don talk. He's got some great information about making your own wax today.
One thing we need to talk about this time of year, this is December, and we need to winterize beehives. And by winterizing beehives, it can be strictly put your entrance reducer in or get your mouse guard in, go around the back of the hive, lift the hive up from the back, and now you get a general idea how much honey is in the hive. And if you want to get more accurate, you can lift one side, the right side, and then you only have to lift it up, tilt it up maybe an inch, and then just use the other side, lift it up. That's going to give you, without going in the hive, it's going to give you an idea what side the honey's on. And if you got one super or two supers, or you've got more than that, I would suggest getting them into a single story or maximum one super on there, because more supers with more honey actually will create a cold air, and it's more area the bees have to heat. And I'm going to talk about, here's some wax that was actually, get this here up. The president of the Bee Club started making, following some of my videos on YouTube, how to make flat sheets and use it. Well, he put the flat sheets in and couldn't get them to work it. Well, as you can see, I'm going to put a sheet of lighter stuff. Hopefully there's enough lighting here. What he's done is overcooked or ran his wax so hot that he was boiling it and caramelized the wax and actually kind of burned it. So that was one reason I think that the bees wasn't working. But I know there's a lot of people out there that want to make their own foundation, and I'm going to give you a little tip. I mean, you don't need to buy an expensive wax mill. We use these here. These are basically starter strips. Let me get up here, we can see. And you can see a little bit wider one. And I'm going to try to see if you can get a contrast on this. Cell size and that.
Go back a little more, Don. Go back a little
more.
more. Yeah, stay right there. Don't just let it out of focus. Come forward just a little bit. That's about, I guess that's about as good as you're going to get.
I think it's the lighting or something. But this is one thing that you can do. I mean, I'm here to help the new beekeeper. You don't want to spend $2,000? Here's a little trick. This is 2 sheets of, there's no side to the frame on it. It's just sheets of plastic foundation. You see there's 2 sheets there. And what you want to do is you get a plastic tub, like a Tupperware or a Rubbermaid tub, and get your water out of the tap as hot as you can get it. Put your flat sheets in it. Well, you need a board. I should have brought my board up. What we're going to do in January is we're going to actually, from start to finish, we're going to videotape us making wax. But what you do is take a flat sheet on a board and dip it. And you'll get a sheet like this. And then this is already it's a raised up foundation. You'll put that flat sheet between 2 sheets of this plastic. Some people call it plasticell. You see how there's 2 of them together? And if you got that water to where you can barely put your hands in it, you take that flat sheet and then lay this flat and take a rolling pin and roll back and forth 2 or 3 times. It'll make slight impressions in that flat sheet. The bees are a lot more likely to draw it out better than just a plain flat sheet. But I've used flat sheets in the past, and I've done it. And I'm going to try to do a start to finish in January. And I got to get my help over here to hold the video camera because I don't want to be touching this stuff here with wet fingers and running the roller and everything else. We might have a couple students down there and doing it. But any of these little things that we do, if you've got a question, jump right in there and by all means ask it. And we're coming into winter time now, so if you've got any kind of things right now going on that you might have a problem with, now's the time to do it.
Ed, you mentioned you started to ask a question, but it looks like Don answered it. Do you still have a question there, Ed? Jim has a question. Should we use soap in the water to keep it from sticking?
If you got a Rubbermaid tub, I usually use maybe about 10 or 15 drops. You don't want to get a whole lot in there. It's not going to hurt the bees, but the least amount, it's just a release agent is all it is. And we ran 6 to 7 hours downstairs solid of running sheets of wax. I've had students bring over wax today and we just exchanged it out and made foundation with it. And we didn't probably use more than a drop or two in probably a quart and a half of water that is underneath the rollers. So basically, I've been running wax all week. I've been going down there 3 and 4 hours, and I tried it with absolutely no soap at all. It does work, but you have to keep your rollers really wet. And wax won't stick to water on the rollers. But if they get dry, or you get a little BB of wax into the cell size, it's like a snowball going downhill. It just keeps picking up more momentum. But soap, try to get the cheapest soap, non-perfume soap. Don't use Dawn because Dawn has got some kind of agent in it. It'll actually soften your wax up and it'll keep it a stickiness. I use a no-name cheapo stuff and it's working good. Ed saying use Pam. No, don't use Pam. Pam, it'll degrade the wax and it'll actually make it gummy. It'll stick together and you won't get it apart.
Any other questions on wax at the moment? The reason I'm interested in wax, Don, is as I was sharing earlier, I have connections in both the pharmaceutical and makeup industries that use a lot of beeswax, and right now their big thing is, I mean, look at Burt's Beeswax. It's a huge empire now.
Right.
You know, some guy started out just making lip balm and went crazy with it. So all of the major a lot of the nutraceuticals are interested in beeswax. A lot of them are interested in cosmetic wax, and of course they want the highest purity that they can possibly get, no insecticide, blah blah blah.
Well, you could see one of the main reasons of making your own foundation. Now, you can't buy anywhere in the United States that I know buy wax that has chemical free. So the only true way to know what you're getting is to either let them draw all their own comb out or start with someone like me that has chemical free wax and start with something like this, a starter strip. Now, there's a way you can even do without that. I mean, you could take the cleat bar from your frame, and first you need to get at least an ounce of good, clean wax. And an ounce is about, about 1.25 inches square by 1/2 inch high. That's about an ounce. And you can just take that cleat bar and rub that wax all over it. And you put it vertically back in the frame, and the bees will draw it out themselves. But the main thing is we got to keep chemical out of the beehive. And if you buy wax from any bee supply house, don't take my word for it. You can take a sample and send it off, and they'll tell you the parts per million of trash and everything you could never imagine is in that stuff. And they're selling it as natural beeswax. So most beeswax in this country is coming from overseas. So I didn't really want to buy a wax mill, and now I'm at the point now I'm trying to keep people's bees alive, and some people are actually starting to buy wax mills from me. And We sell them here and we ship them and we train on it. And there's bee supply houses out there that are selling wax mills. There absolutely is no instructions on them. So if you buy a wax mill, and if someone's not there to teach you and show you the do's and the don'ts, you just blunder through it. And sometimes you can get a good wax mill without instructions and have it so gummed up that you have to actually strip it apart and take it out, pressure wash it. And I can give you some people's names that can attest to that.
Don, Jim has a question about, he wants to know, will the bees keep the same cell size if you use the starter strips?
Most of the time they do, unless you're in extreme hot weather. And what we had a problem this year here, we had an exceptional heavy honey flow, and we found that starter strips like this was doing far better than full sheets. We was putting full sheets in, and I was running probably 6 sheets to the pound, maybe 6.5 or 7 sheets to the pound. And that's sheets per pound rated at a deep frame. So much honey coming in, the honey just kind of sagged and bagged over and fell over. And what we done is put starter strips in and eliminated, and the bees built a stronger comb and better wax on it. So you have to kind of go from one year to the next and see what is going to work the best for you.
All righty. Well, do we have any other questions? Oh, you know what? Let me open up the microphones. I'm really sorry, guys. I forgot to open up to Q&A.
You got to unmute everybody so that they can get in there. They can remute their microphone themselves if they don't talk. And if you're trying to watch on YouTube or something, we're going to get a bunch of feedback. So if you start getting a lot of feedback, we're going to mute your mic. And no matter how you think the question that you're going to ask doesn't sound,
All attendees are muted and may unmute themselves by pressing *6.
You got to ask the question if you want to get an answer. Okay, guys, you're ready to talk. If you press down *6, it should unmute you, as well as you may go ahead and use the left-hand panel to unmute yourself too. Ask anything you like.
Evening, Joe. Joe's microphone is off. Can't hear you, Joe.
I said, can you hear me now?
Yeah, now you're cooking good.
All right, I'm gonna try to teach you something tonight. I'm gonna try. Hopefully, I do. You talked about feeding with drinking water bottles and heat up in the middle of the day and force the liquid out in that. If you take them bottles and fill them up to the lower part of the neck, grab a hold of the bottle in the middle and squeeze it till it comes out, turns it over. That leaves the thing sucked in, and that way when it heats up in the middle of the day, it won't push the syrup out into the hive.
That's a good tip. But the water bottle that you're holding there, it's sun sensitive and it breaks down so quick. If you're going to use those type for feeders for those baby nukes, Coke bottles or Sprite bottles, they got a different plastic composition and they won't break down in the sun. I've learned a lot of that stuff the hard way, and it might sound silly to most people, but that particular jar or bottle there, it's real thin plastic, and usually about 10 days, you go out there and it'll work fine. And about the 8th or 10th day, you go to squeeze it and turn it over, and it'll disintegrate in your hand. The same thing with milk jugs.
I used it all last year on my Queen Castles. They're still fine.
The sun hit them. Well, you don't have the heat we have down here.
Well, that may be true too.
We have a more rays, I guess. But if you can get some good use out of them, it's good.
Can you see that? I got an O-ring on that.
Oh, yeah.
It's a bit bigger than that lid, and it seals that so the water won't get down in them mini nukes.
Oh, yeah. You come up with some good ideas. I need to start coming up there and taking some lessons from you.
I'm glad. Maybe work. I mean, keep the water out of the hives, but it seals down real nice.
Right. Yeah.
don't know. People may get tired of me looking at it. Let me see here. Yeah, see that rubber O-ring goes right down in there.
Yep.
See it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get up here and let somebody ask questions.
Ed wants to know, he's been having some crazy weather with extremes from hot, cold, probably some rain, probably some dryness. What's that going to do to his bees? He's worried about them. I guess he's a little worried about them getting harmed by it.
Well, basically, the bees, if you leave them alone in the wintertime, they're going to regulate themselves. Uh, I'm getting emails. I get people send me things about they listen to too much stuff on the internet and they're starting to put pollen substitutes out, or they're putting honey out, or they're overfeeding. You have to watch. If you start to stimulate that queen and she starts to laying up good, she thinks it's spring, and then pretty soon you get a cold snap in there and the bees cluster so much. Anything that's outside that cluster is going to get chilled. So they're going to haul it out as dead bees or chill brood. And it's taken honey, it's taken resources to get that point. So you can basically knock your population down real fast by overfeeding in the wintertime. If you see the bees flying and they're bringing a little bit of pollen in the wintertime, leave well enough alone. They can regulate themselves. But people get overzealous and start putting all these additives out there in the wintertime. I put videos out probably 5, 6 years ago telling people that I basically don't feed sugar water from November to February. And I mean, North Georgia, and we still have a mild winter, but that is not a good idea anything further up than that, because the bees have to evaporate all that moisture and it forms condensation in the hive. And the condensation is going to kill bees a whole lot faster than you think the starvation would be. The bees know how to prepare for winter. We get in there and start monkeying when we shouldn't be.
Jim wants to know, he's going back to the bath and release rollers on the mill.
Mm-hmm.
What temperatures specifically for wax in the release bath and rollers?
Well, the rollers basically, without having to set, they got adjustments on it. You can set the wax as thick as you want. I got mine set to where I can adjust them basically by running hotter wax and hotter water. And that water is when you're releasing the flat sheets. If you keep it hotter and you don't dip as long, you can make thinner sheets. Or, if you want to make a real thick sheet and you're running 2 elements in your heating unit, the wax gets so hot you almost have to make one dip, hold it up, let it frost over, and then actually turn it 180 degrees and dip the other side. If you dip it twice the same way, one side of the board is going to be thicker, and when you run it out through them rollers, it's either going to go to the right or it's going to go to the left. It ain't going to feed through straight because one side is thicker than the other. And I've had, people call me up and they'll run the wax mill here that they buy. It's running it perfect. And they get to the house and then it's the little things they're not paying attention to. You got to dip it and hold it and get it up straight and let it get frosted. So it's actually takes a little technique. Once you get it down, you can just go like crazy.
Sounds good. Johnny mentions that his birds are taking corn dust from his bird feeder on warm days now.
Well, the bees they're picking up something, they're using the pollen that's probably in it on a warm day. And when I'm running the sawmill, they're out there I thought they was actually picking up the sawdust, but I think what they're doing is they're taking the sap off of the pine trees and the poplars, what little sap's in there. And if you're cutting maple, they're all over that. So it's basically like a sugar maple or a curly maple. There's sugars in those trees, in that sap. So that's what they're getting.
All right. Well, any other questions, guys? You can unmute yourself. If you have any problems, you can write in the chat. Let's get some more questions in here. Anybody? Well, again, back to my desire to supply pharmaceutical waxes where I have my home in Arizona. Now, I'm in North Dakota working right now, but eventually I plan to go back to Arizona. It's a very rural cattle area. There's no crops, there's no spraying, there's very few people. Almost everybody has rock gardens. So I can really control access to insecticides and provide a really clean wax. You mentioned that you can have your wax certified or that you can have your wax tested, Don.
Right.
How do you go about that?
I believe Beltsville Bee Lab in Maryland, you can write to them or you can even call them and you can send a small sample to them and they'll give you a breakdown of everything that's in that wax. I mean, even here, I'm not using chemicals, but I can't guarantee there's somebody a quarter a mile down the road or a mile that the bees are out there getting. Or if your county comes along and they're spraying some kind of fungicides or weed control along the roads, your bees can get in it. But if you want to check store-bought wax, or if you're buying wax from someone, you could take a sample and send it off. I mean, sometimes just knowing what's in it make you feel a lot better. Or if you're having a problem losing bees and you don't know, I mean, sometimes it's the little things that you're overlooking.
That's a good point, Don, that you can have it analyzed. It must be fairly reasonable in cost, I take it.
It shouldn't be too much. I mean, you know, beekeeping, you got to spend money where you need to spend it.
Yep. So Ed wants to know about Italian bees. How easy are those to handle, Don?
All bees, basically, if you're getting them from a reputable breeder, you shouldn't have problems with them. Everybody's kind of got their own favorite. I'm not a big fan of pure Italian bees. I like to mix the races up and get genetics from different ones. My opinion, your pure Italians are more likely to starve out through a winter than, say, your Carniolan or your Caucasian bees. Each one has got a certain characteristic, you might say. A lot of big producers don't like Caucasian bees because they just like to glue up everything. If you're selling pollen or propolis, I mean, it's good. If you're selling comb honey, they make beautiful white comb honey. Your Russian bees and your Carniolan and your Caucasian bees, and then that old line they used to have, those bees there are geared more. The queen, when the pollen is not coming in, is heavy. They're more likely to start to slow down a little bit. But Italians, even if there's not much pollen coming in, if you're feeding them a little bit, them boogers will actually just keep going and going and going right through winter, and they lay so many eggs that so many bees hatching out, they can be super honey on there, and then 4 or 5 days later, they're starving. They've eaten it up. So you have to just pick the race. I like to buy bees from reputable people that actually improve their stock. If you buy from somebody who's not improving stock, what they're doing is they're breeding their own stock back into their own stock, and usually the third, fourth year, the bees have a bad temperament. So that's one reason, that I like to buy some new stock and bring it in every year. So you keep changing it up a little bit. You don't get that inbred.
Right, Don, and your bees, you've referred to your bees mostly as mutt bees anyway, right? They're a little bit of
Well,
everything.
that's what a lot of people like to call them, but you can take my bees and you could take them out west. I've sold them to 2 or 3 people in Kansas, and I've had a few people in Arizona, and they claim that those bees out there are so mean that most of them wear 2 bee suits, and the bees are very aggressive. I've had people that would write back and say they've got my queens and requeened them, and they're actually working them 1 bee suit, or some of them are working them in shorts. I mean, Jim's down in southern part of Texas, and I have a fellow that's over there in Brownsville. I got one in Henderson, Texas. I've got 4 or 5 out in Texas. Now, all I know is what they're telling me. A lot of the local bees seem to be a lot more aggressive, and when they get in my stock, they claiming they're a whole lot more gentle. So as long as they're buying queens and they see that there's a difference, I'm not going to argue with them.
Jim says that Don's
Everybody's
bees are Georgia peaches.
threshold is a lot different than other people's. I've done some videos on doing cutouts, and I'll go over there in just a t-shirt. And I took students there, and just the mere thought of having all them bees in a closed area gets a lot of people nervous. I personally, just don't worry about it. You have to get your threshold of working bees, and having that many bees flying around, you're just being normal.
All right. Well, like I said, Don says that yours are Georgia peaches, your bees. Uh, Ed wants to know, when are you taking orders for queens, Don?
My students now. I start doing my students' orders in January, but customers who are buying, or they're using them for pollinating, I start taking orders from the public usually in February. And I'm going to have bees for my students available probably the third week in March. And I'm trying to get them to pay either 50% upfront or all of it. Because if they try to pay a little here, a little there, it's too much trying to keep up on the book work. We got so much going on. It gets hectic when bee season comes. We got people in and out of here, and you got the people that want one package or two, and then you got the ones 10, 20, or 30, and we got some of the students that are buying 50 to 100, 150 at a time, and they're hauling them to other states to resell them or to populate their bee yards. So the bees coming from this bee yard here, is they're all over the place, and you can see people here working them. You can wear a bee suit here if you want, but the majority of people I have here, I'd say about 98% of them, they don't wear a bee suit. And the ones that wear a bee suit, usually within half an hour, they're out of it and they're working, with shorts. So I can't say, anymore that the bees are gentle. They live, they're hardy, and they do make honey. So that's the things you look for in a bee.
All right. Do we have any other questions tonight, guys? Hoping to get through at least the half-hour mark here.
Yeah, Daryl, he's joined us. He's come down from, I believe he drove from Arkansas, come over here to visit me and look the bee yard. I was hoping he'd get in here and talk about his experience. I guess there's a lot of people that's just bashful. Don't be bashful. We're all here together to learn from one another.
Yeah, Don, what do you charge for commercial bee class?
Do what?
What do you charge for a commercial bee class?
I charge $500 a year, and I have people that will come, whenever they have the time. If you can come 2, 3 days a week, that's up to you. If you can come once or twice a month, that's up to you. I sell it as $500 for the year. I have people that's been here to do the year, and they come back once or twice a year, and I don't charge them anything extra. They know that when they get here, this is hands-on, so they're more than glad to get in here and jump. And you can't learn if you come up here, stay for 2 months straight. There's so much information comes to you so quick, it's mind-boggling.
I'm gonna give you another tip on keeping the moisture out of them mini nukes. Can you see it? Political signboard in there?
Yeah.
Staple that around there and leave a 1/4 inch around all the way around for there. It gives them, let the moisture out, but really don't put a airflow to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we got on our feeders now, what we're doing is we're putting a 1-inch hole, and we're putting the screen on the inside of the feeder, for the air hole. But now on the supers and the high boxes, we put the screen on the outside. Now, people say, why do you put it on the inside of one and the outside on the other? Well, if you stop and think about your hive top feeder, it sits on the top of the hive. You got your lid on top, whether it's a migratory or whether it's a telescoping. If you're not paying attention, you reach down there and you lift the lid up from the back, and now you've got a sharp point stuck up on your fingernail from that hardware cloth. So that's one reason there. Now on the hive, the supers, we put it on the outside. Same thing. You don't catch your fingernail, but when you pull a frame out, if you have a jagged wire or something that's jagged on the side of that frame, it catches and it can pull it out of your fingers and you can drop it and damage the queen. So every time I do something or put something out there, some people might look at it, well, that's strange. But if you stop and think about all the videos that I put out there, everything is said or done for a reason, not just because I'm set in my ways. I have a reason behind everything.
On your hive top feeders, I actually take a 2-inch hole saw and drill a hole down the middle and screen it, and then put 2 3/4-inch holes in the sides. That gives positive airflow up there. It works pretty good.
Oh yeah. You know, it's just the more holes you put in can't hurt nothing. Have you noticed you get more honey by putting just plain water in that feeder in the summer? It increases the honey flow.
Really not had my bees long enough to know that yet. Well, I'll find out.
You'll be getting like me. You'll have a bunch of hives and you can't keep bees in them. Too many cells.
Yeah. Making bees not a problem. Making boxes a problem.
That's what I tell my students. I mean, they come here and I try to explain to them where they can grasp it. They want to learn to ride a high performance motorcycle and they can't ride a tricycle. And the first day they're here, they want to learn the craft. And I said, well, basically what you should do is cut cells. It's more natural. It's a better cell. And by cutting cells, there's no way first year you're going to build boxes fast enough to keep up with the cells. And until you experienced it, you think I'm kidding. But the sky's the limit, really. When you cut cells, you can make more queens and more boxes of bees than you realize.
Last week you talked about doing that 16 frames of them minis in the medium super.
Right.
And let them draw them out and put the eggs in. Now, would you put them eggs in the minis, or would you cut cells out of another hive and to put in the minis?
I would probably cut cells from another hive because the minis are basically to get your mini nukes up and running. And the brood that's in there or the eggs in there is just an extra boost. You need that sealed, ripe queen cell to put in that mini nuke because you want that queen to come out within 24 to 48 hours. If you got any longer than that, you're going to get too much drifting of those bees. See, we're setting up, like if we're setting beehives up, mini nukes in the front yard, we're shaking bees from 8-frame hives that maybe is 25 or 50 or maybe 150 foot from where we're setting our minis up. So you're going to get a percentage of bees to drift back to the parent hive. But that's one of the things most people don't realize. You've got to figure to shake more bees in that mini than you think you need because you're going to get a percentage drift back. The younger bees, you know, they haven't gotten their orientation flights, they're going to stay there. So that's key thing right there, to get that queen cell hatched out as soon as you can.
If you were put them in there and keep them closed up for 3 days, though, they ought to be dedicated to that hive, oughtn't they?
Well, there's other complications can come in there. I mean, you have, if you're setting them up and you got plenty of shade, you got plenty of food in those frames, that's one thing. But, you know, we have to take in general, there's a lot of people that don't have enough shade trees. And if they're setting up 50 or 100 of them out in open sun, they got sun on all 4 sides for a long period of time, you coop them up, you run the risk of overheating those bees. So you could lose, you know, on mortality.
But if you keep bees pinned up for 3 days, they're pretty well dedicated to that hive, even though if they was foragers. Right?
As a rule, yeah. I mean, you know, you're going to still get a few stragglers that get lost, but that's one way of doing it. I mean, if you got shade, I mean, I've make 25, 30 splits and stack them up on top of one another under a tree where it's shade. And don't even set them on stands for 2 days. Don't hurt a thing. But you need drawed comb, you need honey in that box to hold them for a while.
Sugar water's fine, right, sir? All right,
Jim's drilling holes 9/16 in back sides of the feeders. He's really drilling away here.
Don, Ed actually wants to know about, can you put too much dry sugar on for the winter, or is that just something you do? You go out, you check them, put some emergency rations on.
That's,
you know, come back
basically
in a week.
It's an emergency rationing. You know, I think I talked about it last week, but if you can get you a ketchup bottle, put you some honey in there, or if you don't have honey, mix up really thick, probably 4 or 5 to 1 uh, sugar syrup, and turn your frame sideways and take that ketchup bottle and just spray that syrup in there and put that up against a cluster. That'll save a hive from starving. But dry sugar is just an emergency, measure. I dump maybe 2 cups in each hive. You know, just like I said at the beginning, winterizing your hive, go out there, lift the hive up and lift it from the back, lift it up an inch. If you got some weight to it, there's no need to drop sugar in it. You've got honey. If you want to be more identify where it's at, you can lift the right side up about an inch, go over and lift the left side up. The heaviest side is going to tell you where the honey's at. And the majority of the time, the heavy side will be on your eastern side of the hive. The western side, you'll find mostly your brood. Now, I'm not no genius, but everything is common sense that I try to preach. The sun sets in the west, so on the outside of that hive, the sun hits it longer in the day, so that's where they're going to put more of the brood, on that side of the hive. Now, until somebody proves my idea is wrong, that's the stuff I go with. What I see works here. How you doing, Jamie? Welcome to the chat. Jump in there if you got a question. Unmute your mic if you're going to talk. We won't be able to hear you.
Let me see if I can find him. I'll unmute him. Oh, you're showing on a mobile phone, Jamie. Is that right, or are you using a PC? Yeah, we don't have audio from you, Jamie. Sorry. You're unmuted though. You may have
but
to.
He can text.
Yeah,
if you got a question, text it.
You may be able to exit the chat, Jamie, and then come back. If you plugged your microphone in after you started the chat, it won't pick it up. So you might have to close the chat and reopen it. Up to you. Just I don't know what experience you might be having right now. Let's see. Anybody else have a question? You can either unmute yourself and ask it, or you can type it in. One of the two. Well, it's almost 7:40 then, guys. I guess we'll give Jamie a few seconds here to see if he can resolve his problem. And I wanted to let everybody know there's not going to be a chat over Christmas, and then New Year's weekend there will not be a chat either. So we'll see you all back here in the new year. So that'll be 2 weeks where there are no chats. Don and I both want to have some time with family and work and Christmas stuff going on. So we will catch you back on, I believe, Don, we agreed on, let me check my calendar. January the 9th would be the first bee conference of the new year. Is that correct?
I don't have my calendar here, but that sounds good.
Well,
whenever you send me the invite, that's when I jump on.
Yeah, the first Saturday is going to be the 2nd, which is right after New Year's Eve. So probably not everybody's going to want to. They're still going to be out visiting family. They're going to be out doing things. So we're probably not going to have a good turnout anyway. So we will see you guys back on the 9th. Let's see if we can get any more questions. This is your last chance, guys.
Now, is there any way that the viewers can do any videotaping off of the screen or of the chat? Because we're going to try to set up to where we're going to do a live shoot from the basement, and we're going to make foundation. And I'm going to show you step by step, so each and every one of you will be able to make your own foundation. There won't be nothing hid. There's nothing on any of my videos is ever edited. So whatever, we're going to probably have a full house then, and I probably will have to, have the questions relayed to me. If you have questions about what I'm doing, I'll have somebody down there to help with it, because I'm going to be running the wax mill and the dipping board and the cooling and all that stuff there, and I'll probably be running back and forth. So if there is a way that you could videotape it or because for your own use, or I guess you could download it off of YouTube because it'll be going up to YouTube probably a week after or 2 weeks. So whenever I get the video, I upload it up to the YouTube channel.
Right. So if it's on the YouTube channel, Don, everybody should be able to see it.
Ed wants to know how much do mills weigh. The wax mills, they run anywhere from about I guess the smaller one is about 95 pounds, maybe 100 pounds, and the commercial one is about 130, I think, or 140. If Jim is still here, Jim got one of my smaller mills, and I don't know if he ever weighed it. He probably could tell you about how much his was.
That was a smaller one?
There you go. We can hear you now.
That was a smaller one?
Yeah.
You need a wheelbarrow for the big one.
That was the small one you got.
They're heavy.
They're heavy. You had the one that had the straight handle on it. The one that's got that drop forged handle. The handle itself is about 25 pounds more than just your handle. They're built. And Ed wants to know the plastic mill. The plastic mills, I sold the last one just a little bit above my cost on it. For another $300 to $600, I can get a metal mill. And a fella bought it from Eastern North Carolina, and he's using it today. In fact, I've sold 5 or 6 of those plastic mills. People walk in and they look at the plastic and they say, I would like a metal one. Why? I don't want a plastic one. But the last one that we sold, a different man built them for me. And that white plastic was made out of that gear stuff that they make high-speed gears out of. It's tough stuff. Unless you take a wire brush, you cannot destroy it. But I went to all metal mills now for probably 3 years, I think now. So I'm not going to revert back to the plastic. I used them since 90 or 91, and the original one, when I bought it, it was around $700 or $800. I sold it 4 years ago. I kept it around as an old friend, and finally, when I sold it, I ended up getting 3 times my money out of it. That's how much wax mills has gone up. So it's you're at a point right now. People has to have bees. If you've got a garden, you got to have bees. And if you want clean wax, you've either got to use foundationless, let them draw themselves out of a stick, or you've got to make your own foundation. And if you're going to sell bees, the window of opportunity is short. So full sheets just get you down the road, makes you more money than the little starter strips, because the starter strip you have to feed resources is used to draw that wax, either honey or sugar water. So that's what.
Daryl wants to know.
If you want to make
a
lot of honey, get a lot of bees. That's the easiest. And if you want to make $1 million, it's simple. Just invest $3 million. You'll make $1 million.
You're right there.
Well, he wants to start out with. Now, you're pretty well known, Don, for saying that people can go from 1 or 2 hives all the way up to hundreds of hives if they want to, without buying bees. Just keep making splits.
That's the simple truth. And if eventually I'm going to have all my students get on here. I've got tons of them all over the country, and I don't think one can tell you that if they use 10% of what I teach them, that they can't be successful. And the majority of them, they'll throw their hands up when they get to 25 because, they think 1 or 2 hives, you split them once a year. I've had students here this morning, and he was one of them that bought packages and split his packages 16 times the first year. Each package was split 16 times. So the only thing that's going to stop you is yourself and not having boxes. Best thing to do is buy you a good old Craftsman table saw and scrounge around, get your wood. Don't have to be fancy. Build a box, and they will come.
Don, why you reckon nobody's taking their wax and that's chemical free and not selling it on the market?
They are. I mean, Wade, I don't know. I think he was started in here today or jumped in the chat. He bought some of mine. He about twisted both of my arms off to get a block of wax because he wanted chemical-free wax because they make, some chemical face creams and lip balm stuff like that. And if you're going to do that, the slightest amount of any kind of chemical in there is going to give someone that's using it lip balms or salves and stuff. It could give them a rash. So clean wax from your own hives that you haven't put nothing in. I get a pound at $20 is my starting price if I sell it, and I try to keep as much as I can because we go through wax to make nukes every year, so can't make enough of it.
Yeah, I'm thinking, chemical-free wax sheets, you ought to get $2 a sheet out of it easy enough, aren't you?
I don't really try to sell my wax. I mean, if I have students and we're doing a wax class, that's what James was here this morning. He come over here and worked, about, I guess he left about 2:00 and come over here at 9, and we made. He took 65 sheets with him today, and that's about the max that I usually let a student take. If we have 2 or 3 students down there, I let them buy maybe 10% of the wax at $2 a sheet, but I just as soon keep it off. But I have kind of an obligation. If it's a student, I try to help them with clean wax. And once they get up on their feet, then they start producing a lot of wax themselves. But $20 to $25 is a fair price for chemical free. And it's like Propolis. People say, where do you sell your Propolis? I have never yet advertised. And I have people that send me emails or come here and stop by and buy that stuff. It's liquid gold, and they're using it for more and more things now.
Don, how do you clean the propolis? How do you clean the propolis to be able to use it pharmaceutically or whatever?
Well, I don't clean my wax. I used to do on the bottom of the wax, I would scrape it. That's what I would consider a number 2. Where I get my number 1 propolis is when I clean my frames. In the fall, I cut the wax out and I don't scrape no propolis. I leave it on until spring when I put all new wax in. Then I take a dull knife, and on the sides of the frames is where you're going to get your best. The second best is on the frame rest. I concentrate just on the frames on the sides or on the top bar, and you're going to get some number 1 stuff there. And $60 a pound, I'll take the time, and scrape it. You've probably seen my containers. I've got some, I guess they're about 2-pound peanut containers. And when they get about 3/4 full, that's between $60 and $90. And if you ship it overseas, it's going up as high as $600 a pound for good, clean stuff. They want stuff that hasn't been cleaned. They run it through, one guy was telling me he uses Everclear, which is some kind of high potency liquor, I guess. And he purifies it, and he makes little tinctures for, canker sores and sores on your lip and stuff like that. And he's getting 1 ounce. He's selling it for like $60 an ounce. And he buys that propolis. Now, he probably puts the Everclear in it, and I guess he runs it through like a coffee filter to get, the stuff that don't dissolve.
Thank you.
So, go ahead. Sorry. Daryl, just to clarify, your question is a much bigger question than just how do you get a lot of honey from one hive. There's so much more going on there. Don doesn't even recommend that you have one hive. He recommends you have 2 because you can play them off of each other and see which one is doing well and which one may be sickly. So you're asking a lot more than just hey, how do I maximize honey production from one hive? And Don is also about making queens and making splits and getting up into a full-fledged production atmosphere. So there's a lot there. I suggest that you might want to start with his free videos too, and then you can always come here and ask your questions and get it answered. But it sounds like you're wanting to get started and you really want to know what's going on, and Don's a professional. So this is not a Saturday Bee Club class. Let's put it that way.
Are you talking to me?
I was talking to
Are you
Daryl
talking to me?
Pounders. I was talking to Daryl Pounders. He had a question about
Yeah,
how do I
it
get the most honey? Right.
that's me.
Oh,
Are you
okay,
can
good.
are
We
you
can hear
talk?
you now.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
No, what my question was, I've got 7 hives. Yes, I am new, but I went to Don's and I got a couple of queens from him. What I'm wanting to know is if I want one hive to make a lot of honey, do I go double deep? Do I need a queen born that year? Do I need a queen that's overwintered? That's the question I want to ask.
Well, that's a real leading question there. Uh, Personally, I think queens going on their second year do the best. As far as the honey, you could live a quarter of a mile from me and make no honey, or you could make, one hive can make 5, 6 gallons of honey. And just going by students that work these hives, we can average anywhere from 5 gallons, 3 gallons. I've seen 6.5 gallons per hive. But you got to have a hive that is basically borderline ready to swarm all the time. And you've got to go all the way down to the brood chamber, to the bottom board, every 14 days. And when I say borderline, they and bees are packed, and you got to install at least 2 supers at a time. And bees do 2 things. They're very basic: multiply and store honey. So when they're borderline ready to swarm, they are full strength, and they can fill a super up in 2 days, 3 days, and have it capped. That ain't a problem. But if you're not there and you don't attend them, they make queen cells. Then that hive loses 50% or more strength because they subdivide, go out and make a new hive. So that's the only thing about your, making honey. Most hives, even with a package, should make at least 3 gallons of honey. Now, a hive top feeder with water on, that increases the amount of honey you can make, because every bee going in and out of the hive is going to haul nectar, not 50% hauling water back to the hive, because the young bees, or the bees that are not oriented to the outside yet, they're out there and they're waiting for someone to bring them a drink. So if the water's there, they go right up in the thing. And they also use the water as a cooling to cool the hive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That
Jim
answered my
say they
question.
got to be bees in a natural food source. So that's what I'm basically saying is, I could be making honey here, and someone down the road, a quarter of a mile or a half a mile, could be making tons, or vice versa. It's local area. No two areas are the same.
No,
Alrighty.
that was really what I wanted to know
Go ahead.
was, did the hive have to be on the verge of swarming to really make a lot of honey? And you just answered my question. So thank you.
That's, if you want to make a lot of honey, my simple solution to that is a lot of hives. I would run hives that are constantly wanting to build up. And if you making 2 to 3 gallons on 10 hives, rather than one hive making 10 gallons, and worrying about it swarming. Because, a lot of people want to take a vacation. If you're not there watching them, they get that swarm mode, they're gone. And if you're lucky, they land somewhere close where you can find them. But when they swarm, that is money going down the road. You can't recoup.
Well,
Don,
guys, go ahead. Go ahead.
would it be a good idea to go through my hive since it's going to be in the low 70s this week?
Well,
Just
to do what? Close them up?
now, just to look around, see if I got enough honey and stuff. I got one swarm I caught October the 22nd, and I was wanting to see how much honey they had in there.
Do you have any of your own honey right now in jars?
Uh, no, all of mine's in my other 3 hives. I didn't pull any this first year. I just started in May.
Yeah. Well, you should have pulled honey, because if you got honey sitting on there, you're doing more harm than good.
Yeah.
So I would say if you go out there and lift the hive up, if it feels light compared to one of your other ones, you got 7 hives, Go along, lift 2 or 3 up, and then go to that other one that you just caught late in October and lift it. If it feels 1/4 the weight, I would get someone local that you know, and I would feed some honey. If you put it on a hive top feeder, a pint to a pint and a half of honey is better than trying to put sugar in there, because 1 quart of honey is going to be like putting 20, 25 pounds of sugar on a hive. They get more nutrients from that honey.
Okay.
Yeah, Don, you talk about making bees and making 17 splits off of a box of bees. I've not even been to your class yet, and I made 12 splits off a box.
Well, you listen to those videos. That it's simple stuff that works. I mean, that's why if you look at the videos, I have people from everywhere coming over here, and they got people in wherever they live in their states. But I guess a lot of beekeepers think it's all top secret. I mean, I'm trying to get more people to realize there's nothing to it other than common sense. Get out there, work your bees, and it's not hard.
I watched the doctor in what is it, bees or whatever here a video this week, and he said absolutely she'd never take any honey out of the brood chambers, and I just laughed.
Well, I mean, I've done, I think, 2 videos on why you pull honey from the brood chamber. And if you stop and think, it's strictly common sense. When a hive gets honey bound and there's too much honey in that brood chamber, there's no place for the queen to lay, that hive is more apt to fail than, I mean, people think taking it out of the brood chamber is going to starve. If you look at it the opposite, pull that honey out, put it in jars, and then it's reserved to feed back to them. But most of the time they find out by taking that honey out, their hive actually done a lot better.
Well,
Yeah,
guys, it sounds like we're just about done then. You ready to wrap it up, Don?
whenever you're ready. If no one else got any questions, if they got
Anybody else
questions.
got a question? Merry Christmas to everybody from Ed and from us, Don and myself, Joe and everybody else. And we'll see you on the new year. I think the 9th is what we said. Hold on, let me look really fast.
And everybody's going to have a good, happy, Merry Christmas. And January 1st, when you see me, I'll be a year older.
Yep. All right. So January 9th.
So I'll be more educated.
Yep. January 9th is our next meeting. Goodbye, everybody. God bless. Merry Christmas.
All right, everybody have a good Christmas. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Thank you, Don.